Welcome to Passing the Plate, the podcast that's all about food, traditions, and the wonderful connections they create. I'm Lisa Lisson, the genealogist and family history expert behind Are You My Cousin?
And I'm Ashley Covelli, the food writer and recipe developer behind Big Flavors from a Tiny Kitchen. We'll be your guides on this flavor-packed adventure. We're not just talking about recipes. We're diving into family history, exploring new cultures, and preserving favorite recipes for future generations. In short, we're celebrating the stories and tastes that come with every bite.
So grab a seat at the table and let's embark on a journey of flavor, tradition, and connection. This is Passing the Plate, where every episode is a feast for the senses and a celebration of the ties that nourish our souls. Well, the holidays are fast approaching, and that can mean a lot of stress for those hosting family gatherings. So in this episode, Ashley and I are discussing some of the ways to make holiday life a little bit easier on yourself so you can enjoy your loved ones without the extra pressure. So Ashley, I have a question. Do you feel pressure? Do you feel more pressure and stress during this around your holiday and meal prep this time of year?
Yeah, I can, especially like as somebody who's like known to be someone who cooks a lot. I feel like it can be very easy to feel like you either have to outdo what you did last year or you have to make it exactly the same as you made last year. Or you like, sometimes I feel like you can get so stuck in the routine and tradition of it all that you don't get to like enjoy it as much. So, I have some tips to kind of help with that because I know it can be a lot for people. And we want people to enjoy their families and their celebrations and the food, but so some tips: take it easy. Don't go trying out a bunch of new time consuming recipes on a holiday. Like give them a shot in advance and see how the prep time kind of fits into your, like if you try this new recipe out in say October or September and it takes you 3 hours, is that realistically going to fit into the other things you have planned for Thanksgiving?
That brings up a good point. So let me ask you a question here. So to try out these new recipes ahead of time, how far in advance do you actually plan out your holiday meal?
Oh, that's a great question. And I feel like I don't have a standard answer for that. I do have, I know I've talked about in the past, I use this app called Paprika to save my recipes, and you can save custom menus in there. So I have saved like these are the things we like on Thanksgiving. In an ideal world, I'll make all of these and it'll be great. So I have that saved that I can just use from year to year. But I'll I guess when we figure out if we're hosting, if we're going to somebody else's house, I'll take a look at that whenever we figure out whatever that plan is. Like it's September right now. I have no idea what we're going to do this year.
Same here.
I'll take a look at it and I'll try to decide like, okay, so this year we're not hosting. I'm not going to be making the turkey. So I know I won't have that on my plate. Has there been anything new that I'd like to try? Like, does the host want me to bring dessert? And if so, like, should I bring two things, maybe one thing that we know we all love, and then maybe a new thing that I could try out. So yeah, I feel like definitely planning in advance is important. And if you have something that you've done in the past that you know works for you, that you could just say, I don't want to put any more thought or effort into it this year, I'm just going to go with these things, that's totally fine.
That sounds really good. I mean, I agree. I don't know at this point either exactly what we're doing as well. I do know what some of our tried and true recipes are for whether we are at home or whether we're somewhere else,
right, for
that kind of thing. And so I think that's a really good way to go about it. I think so, our family is a little bit, I think, ahead of yours in the sense that, my children are older. I now have a married daughter. I have, an engaged son. So we, our family traditions are kind of morphing a little bit when it comes to that. And so I think just being flexible is important with that. And I find that I have not in the last few years been quite as tied to, I need to make sure I have that particular recipe done if it's going to stress me out more or stress the family out more. So
absolutely. I think too, if you're like, depending on who's going to be at your table, maybe finding out like if I was having you over, which I would love, that would be so much fun.
Oh, I'm coming.
Would be like, Lisa, what's one dish that to you, it doesn't feel like Thanksgiving without this one dish? So maybe for you, it's, cornbread stuffing, dressing. dressing, stuffing. I never remember the difference between those two things, but I was just
I don't
throwing
remember
cornbread.
either.
I know you're from the South. I figured that would speak to you. So maybe I plan, okay, I'm definitely going to make this. I know for me, when I moved to New York as a up until that point lifelong Midwesterner, moving to having Thanksgiving with an Italian family, there were things that I didn't see on the table that I were like, how can you have Thanksgiving without mashed potatoes? Like that's not a thing. Or green bean casserole. But then to them, it was like they'd never seen it before. And I'd never had like stuffed mushrooms for Thanksgiving. So it was like kind of figuring out where we could meet and like alter things so that everybody felt like seen and included. Um, yeah. So I think that's kind of, if you can kind of get feedback from the people who will be there, maybe just to make sure I don't know, because there's definitely something comforting about Thanksgiving and like traditions, but I do like branching out also.
Right. And I love that question that you had. In fact, I've made note of it so that if I'm
Yeah.
hosting, to ask,
Mm-hmm.
I have a new son-in-law and then I'm going to have a new daughter-in-law, what is it that
Mm-hmm.
you would like to have? What is the one thing? I love that
Yeah.
question because I absolutely would love to do that. And I like, one of the things as a family historian and genealogy researcher, while I love the tradition, I love
Mm-hmm.
seeing things evolve. And so I'm happy
Yeah.
to be part of that involvement for these
Yeah.
generations.
Well, and it makes them feel like seen and valued. And I think especially when you're like marrying into a family or something, like that's so important. So you feel like you're not just like not like trespassing on their holiday meal, like you're actually part of it. And I think
Right.
that's really a really nice thing. So aside from that type of prep, I have a bunch of tips. I have a whole Thanksgiving post on my website that's got like recipes and it's got tips for Thanksgiving prep. So things like earlier in the week of Thanksgiving, so you're not saving everything till the day before. Gather your cookware and your serving dishes in advance. So like you can put a little post-it note inside, like this is the dish I'm going to use for mashed potatoes. This is the dish I'm going to use for the green beans. Like, the containers or the cooking, like green bean casserole, I'll make it in a cast iron skillet and I'll just serve it in the skillet. You don't always have to transfer it to a beautiful platter. Like that's, if you want to, you can, but that way kind of that you have everything accounted for and you don't have to think about it that day. You're just like, oh, let me grab the skillet because this is the one that I'm going to use for this dish. And you can even like the serving utensils too. So like I know I need a slotted spoon with this dish or tongs for this dish. You can just like get it all together so part of that work is done for you. That can be really helpful. You can figure out what types of things you can prep in advance. So like there are things you can fully cook ahead of time and even freeze, like cranberry sauce. You can make it, you can freeze it, or you can, just make it a few days ahead and let it sit in the fridge, or get a can and have your can opener ready, whichever way you like to do
Oh
it.
yeah. My kids still feel like cranberry sauce has to have the little ridges
The
from the
ridges.
can on it.
I wonder I'm sure someone has, if anybody's made a homemade cranberry sauce and then like put it in a can just to get those ridges.
Oh, that would be funny.
Yeah.
I actually have two kinds now. So we have the can because you're just supposed to, and then I also make a regular one.
Yeah, I like making it, and I usually divide mine in half because half of it gets bourbon that doesn't get cooked out, and then half of it's just without.
I'm coming to your house.
Yeah, it's a good time. So I also suggest making a timeline and then adding buffer time. So look at the recipes that you plan to make. Say you have 5 recipes. Read through them and figure out like how much time does this recipe actually take? Because you can't always trust those recipe writers. I try to make it realistic in my recipes and say like the total time includes any sort of like baking time, prep time, all that marinating time. So make sure you know exactly how long each recipe is going to take and which things can like bake together. Say you have 2 different casseroles that go in the same oven at the same time, or for the same, even if it's not the same amount of time, but if it's the same temperature, you could bake those at the same time to kind of help you out there. But definitely build in buffer time. You'd rather feel a little more relaxed than not. I usually add like an extra 45 to 60 minutes in general, just in case things don't quite go to plan.
That's a great idea,
And
definitely.
and to make sure you are thinking with your oven, if you only have one oven, like I have a double oven and then my microwave is also a convection oven. So am I going to be able to bake these 4 things at the same time? Do I have enough oven space? Like, is the turkey taking up, so you really want to like imagine yourself going through it, I feel like.
That's a really good point. And I think that trips people up if you're not used to cooking a large meal.
Yep.
Is, you can prep and get everything done and feel like you're right on it. Yeah. And then I think that's like when I think sometimes young adults get their first big meal, their first apartment, they're doing this, they realize, oh, but I've got one oven and I need to cook 4 things. And so, yes, that is that timing out of the oven or your options there. That's a big thing.
And let me say, there are some things that you can not outsource, but reassign. So like mashed potatoes, A, they make ahead and freeze well. So you could do that in advance. But B, you don't have to do them on the stovetop. I do them in my Instant Pot. And you can do it earlier in the day, like in the morning, get it done, and then leave it on the keep warm setting. So it's sitting there, closed, warm, ready for you whenever you're ready. Like, so that's not taking up oven or stovetop space. Same with, I do that with my cranberry sauce also. You could do it on the stovetop, you could do it in the oven, or you could do it in the Instant Pot. Or, you could use a slow cooker to keep things warm. Just trying to think of things, because I feel like oven and stovetop space are at a premium, especially for a holiday meal. So trying to think of ways that you can avoid using those as much as possible.
Absolutely.
Cheesecake is another thing that you can make in advance. Freezes beautifully. Gravy is easy. Stock. I mean, there's so many things that you can make ahead, or just buy it. Like, don't feel like you have to do everything from scratch. I feel like people, tend to put a lot of pressure on themselves, but at the end of the day, you want to have a good time. You want to enjoy it and not just remember all the stress.
We want to remember the reason that we're having the Thanksgiving meal. We want to make sure the intention is there as well.
Yeah. I mean, one of my best Thanksgiving meals was in the hospital 2 days after my son was born, or the day after my son was born, because like I didn't have to cook any of it, and it was actually very good. And I still would love to know how they made their stuffing. And I didn't have to do dishes, which was so good.
That makes the food really good.
Yeah.
Curious about your family's roots? Wondering who paved the way for you? Delving into your family history is like embarking on a thrilling adventure, but taking those initial steps can feel quite daunting. Are You My Cousin is your one-stop hub for tools, resources, and information to find your ancestors and uncover their stories. Dive into a treasure trove of helpful articles and captivating tutorials full of my favorite tips and strategies to decode your family's past. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just dipping your toes into the waters of genealogy, Are You My Cousin equips you to unearth the captivating tales of your ancestors. Let me help you start finding your ancestors with the Big Genie List, a free guide that I've created full of my favorite websites and resources to help you grow your family tree. To download your copy of the Big Genie List, head to lisalisten.com/biggenie.
A couple other things. A big one for me is accept help. So don't think you have to do every single part of the meal all by yourself. So like you're not getting an award. It's not that big of a deal. If somebody offers to bring something, let them. And also don't be afraid to ask people for what you need. So like, Lisa, can you bring dinner rolls? Or I'd love it if you could bring a vegetable side dish. It'd be a big help if you could bring 2 bottles of wine. Or I'm making a green bean dish. Could you think of another vegetable dish? So you're not doubling up on things, but like, would you bring an appetizer? And again, they don't have to have a homemade thing, but just taking the help, getting a little bit of the pressure off of yourself is really helpful. If you're hosting, set your table on Wednesday. Don't wait until Thursday in the morning when you're like trying to blow dry your hair and all that stuff. Just if you're running behind, you don't want to have to scramble. And then like, as much as I love not using disposable things when you don't have to, there is some great disposable dinnerware that's like fancy looking. Then you don't have to do dishes all night, Like, don't be afraid to lean into things like that.
I love those suggestions because, and it's really, you get not just prepping the food, but prepping the table, prepping the serving dishes. It's like this theme of planning ahead is really what it is. I know that in our family, we are known for making plans.
I can imagine that.
You can imagine I am a planner. My planner is, I have digital planner, which is open as we speak. I have my paper planner over here on the left and my phone that coordinates it all on the right. So, I'm just, it's a whole system, guys. But anyway, but I think that planning ahead, making those plans is very, helpful, and not just the food part, but the other pieces of it, because that's where I know in the past I could get stressed out. Was I knew that I had my food prep done. I knew I had my timing on my oven done. And then, everything's ready to eat, but I haven't, oh, shoot, I can't find the serving bowl, or I haven't set the table, or guess what? I don't have enough clean forks, so now I have to go wash forks. And so
dig them out of the dishwasher. And
Oh, yeah, I've done it.
We've been there. Yeah.
So, yes.
And then one last kind of tip on that part, just something that's helpful thinking ahead, is to have containers ready for leftovers if you don't want all of the stuff in your house, or even your own containers for your own leftovers. But like if you want to send people home with things, food storage containers, the dollar store or the grocery store, you can get them for pretty cheap, or like even reusable or non-reusable, like Ziploc big bags to fill it with some turkey, send them on their way. I've seen some people use aluminum muffin, the disposable aluminum muffin tins, the trays, so everybody can take a scoop of mashed potatoes in one of the divots and beans in another, and that's a kind of cute way to have them get an assortment of things to bring home.
That is.
Or if it's somebody that you see often and you'll get it back, what I kind of like to do is I'll take, say, one of the casserole containers, like for my green bean casserole, I'll divvy the remaining out, but then I'll keep one portion in that casserole dish, and then I'll put portions of the other items in there too, cover it, give that to them, and be like, make sure you bring this dish back to me.
Oh, that's a really good idea. Yeah. That actually, I love that you brought this up, because it is really easy now to find, the food containers at the grocery store, and they're not expensive.
Yeah.
And so, because we bought some, I happened to find some like that were divided, actually. This is even the divided kind at a grocery, and they were on sale, and they were very, very inexpensive. I actually picked some up for my daughter's wedding, because, from leftovers from the wedding, and we ended up having, a significant amount of cake left over. And of course, even after we had the, save the first tier and put it in the freezer. So that morning in the hotel breakfast, all my family's coming down, and Bob and I are down there divvying up wedding cake and putting it into these little containers. I'm like,
breakfast of champions.
Exactly. To send home. We're like, okay, here, here's cake for the road. But it was such a good dinner. I remember thinking, I need to get more of these, because for this reason, when you have family meals, and, to send it on its way. So I love that idea.
If you have the storage space for it, I don't, but if you do, the wholesale club a lot of times has storage containers, and sometimes the divided meal prep style ones in large quantities, so you could keep that on hand too. And the other thing that I've seen, I've not done this, but some people go to Goodwill or local thrift shop, and they'll look in the casserole container section, whatever kitchen section, and sometimes you can pick up an inexpensive casserole dish like that, and that way it's if you don't get it back, maybe whoever you give it to will use it.
That's a good idea. It's actually a little bit more of a green way of passing things along, instead of having to use all the disposables.
Yeah, I know. It's I try to find that nice middle ground, but like I said, no, you can't always do it all. So you need to pick and choose where you want to put your efforts. This is the one day in the next couple months that I'm just I'm going to go disposable. It's fine. I want to have a good time. I don't want to be stressed out too much. So whatever makes sense for you. That's
a great idea. So I'm curious, do you ever, have you ever gone to a restaurant on Thanksgiving?
I have. We did it years ago, and it was great. And I'll tend to if we do that, we'll give a little extra tip, because they're working on a holiday and they're, maybe be away from their own families or whatever. But I don't mind doing that. And we do that Christmas Eve, because years ago, my father-in-law would always make everything, and then I would start making things with him. But when he got sick, he didn't have that much energy. We were like, let's just go to a restaurant, and we'll go somewhere where we can get the type of thing that you usually make. So it's seafood for Christmas Eve. And then it just kind of became a thing. So now every Christmas Eve, we go out and enjoy Italian seafood that we're not cooking. And now it's like, in his memory we go. But I do have a lot of notes for those recipes that I like to actually make them. I just haven't done it yet. That I took meticulously in the kitchen with him over the years.
I love that. I love that idea. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I think only once have I ever actually been to a restaurant on Thanksgiving. And it was wonderful for the reasons that you say.
Yeah.
Definitely. And this, again, treating the service workers well and tipping a little bit more because they are working on a holiday, certainly.
Mm-hmm. So, talking about like holiday traditions and prepping and memories around that, a lot of times people will have either like cookie decorating parties or, there's a time when you want to do your holiday baking. Do you have any memories of doing that kind of thing with your kids or when you were a kid?
So definitely did a lot of cookie baking with my mom around the holidays. Not so much Thanksgiving as much as more the Christmas holiday time period. And with my kids, but what I would do is actually we would make them and put them in the freezer. So while the kids would be home over Thanksgiving break, after the Black Friday shopping, we might. But I would actually be looking. I would at that point be looking ahead to the holidays, and I might make like our favorite sugar cookie dough recipe, and put it in the freezer so that and then it would be ready when we needed it in December, and we could thaw it out and of course make the cookies. And as things got older, I have been known to, if I knew that we were going to be short on time, but we really wanted to do the decorating, I would actually make the cookies themselves and freeze them and then pull them back out, and we would just decorate once they were thawed. Type thing. So yeah.
Well, that's also a great way, like doing the prep in advance, because kids can help, especially if you have young kids, they can help in both times, but they're not like prepping dough and then waiting for it to chill or whatever. And then, because depending on the kid, depending on the day, it can be a lot to do, making the dough and rolling it out and cutting it and decorating it all on the same day. So kind of doing it in installments like that is a great idea. And like, especially if you're cooking other things the same day, you don't want to be too stressed out over it. So I feel like that's a great idea to just like let it be relaxed. Kind of similarly, if you have a day where you're going to be cooking a lot or whatever, you can help yourself out by either, doing like overnight casseroles. There's like some breakfast ones, so that things are easier for you that day when you're really busy, or using your slow cooker for meals, or again, food delivery or a meal out. Like if you're going to be spending the next 3 days prepping a ton of Christmas dinner items and dessert items, just go out. Don't worry about dishes. Let somebody else handle it and enjoy like being out of the house for a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we hope this episode has given you some inspiration on ways to make life a little easier around the holidays, or even days where you're doing entertaining that involves food and loved ones that aren't particularly holidays. You can find the show notes and links for things we discussed in this episode at passingtheplate.org/43. That's a wrap on this episode of Passing the Plate. We hope you enjoyed our journey into the world of food, traditions, and the amazing connections they create.
It's been a pleasure sharing these stories and flavors with you. Remember, food is more than just sustenance. It's a way to connect with our past, present, and future.
So keep sharing your meals, keep passing those plates, and keep creating memories that will last a lifetime. Head to passingtheplate.org/podcast for show notes.